Everybody, welcome to the Mountain West Madness Preview Podcast. I'm Bryan with WyoNation. We are the host of it this year. It's the first time we're all getting together to talk basketball, so we're just going to start with some introductions. We will start with Erik in the top left there.
Hey, what's up, guys? Happy to jump on. Erik Moulton with the Pit Press. We cover the University of New Mexico exclusively, so primarily basketball. Football's been a big hit for us this last year with the hiring of Coach Eck, but I mean, basketball, I think we kind of surpassed some of the expectations, and it's been a fun ride, but I'm happy to jump on and talk the Mountain West tournament with you guys.
All right, Nick, hit it, man.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Nick Urias out of San Jose, covers San Jose State, part of their student radio out there with 90.5 KSJS, and also have my own podcast on the side at the Sports Sentiment. So do a bunch of San Jose State and Mountain West, but more importantly, or more in depth on the San Jose State side. So done football, done basketball. Their athletics has really ramped up and have gotten a little bit more serious here the past couple of years, and just glad to be documenting their progress.
Right on. Our friends from the Sons of Montezuma over here.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for the invite. Really appreciate it. Everyone calls me Fiend. I'm at SDSportsFiend on all my social handles. I'm one of the podcasters for the Sons of Montezuma. We cover San Diego State basketball, football. We also have a baseball, softball podcast. We do NIL for some of the players. We have watch parties. We're really like fan centric and really engaging the fans from a fan perspective.
Right on. We've got Patrick with the Aggship.
Yeah,
Center Square here.
Yeah, Patrick Mayhorn, Center Square here. Patrick Mayhorn with the Aggship. We're a credentialed outlet covering Utah State athletics, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, some Olympic sports as well. You can find my work at the Aggship on Twitter, as well as just www.theaggship.com.
Right on. Swole Cracker himself over here.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Bryan, for having me on. I'm Steve Ivey. I have a YouTube channel, Crackers College Hoops. I started a couple of years ago. It's content. It's dedicated. 90% of it is CSU men's basketball. A little bit of Mountain West. I stopped doing Mountain West when BJ Raines stole Tom Moser from me. So anyway, I'm excited to be here. I've already appeared with 4 of you. This is a real all-star cast. Everybody does such great content, and I'm excited to be here to talk about the Mountain West Conference tournament.
Hey, we're excited to have you, man. And last but not least, conference newcomer covering the Grand Canyon Lopes, Brennan.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Brennan Williams, Go Lopes Radio. Started this up about the start of last season. And it's been a crazy ride. Went from, being in the WAC covering that to all of a sudden kind of getting thrown in the Mountain West and kind of along for the chaotic ride that it was this year. So I feel like I've kind of experienced it all, the UNLV upsets, the crazy games here, crazy games there. And now we got a tournament. So I'm really stoked. You can find me at Go Lopes Radio on X, the Everything app, YouTube. Just cover men's basketball.
Right on. And once again, Bryan Stevens, I'm with WyoNation. I am our basketball correspondent here. We've been doing this for a few years now, and we're happy to get everybody together. So with no further ado, let's get into the brackets. So this is what our bracket's looking like this year. Shook out pretty similar to what we all thought, but just looking at the bracket, we can see, Utah State at the top, San Jose at the bottom, or Air Force at the bottom. Sorry, Nick. And we'll get started at the top there with Utah State. So, Patrick, take it away. Tell us, give us a short recap on what we saw from the Aggies this year and what you expect to see from them against either UNLV or Wyoming when they come up.
Yeah, it was a good year in Logan. It was second outright regular season championship for the Aggies in the last 3 seasons. Mason Falslev had enjoyed a Mountain West Player of the Year candidacy campaign. MJ Collins coming in from Vanderbilt has had a great season. They had a bunch of different guys step up and really, I think, kind of put on display what they're all about in the season finale against New Mexico. Excellent game, 94-90 finish, and just everybody stepping up has been kind of the story of the season for the Aggies. They have stars, but they're not really dependent on just one or two guys. They get contributions from everybody. Struggled down the stretch, as a lot of the top teams in the conference did, but they pulled it together at the end and were able to get the job done in the regular season. Don't love that potential UNLV matchup. I don't imagine that Utah State is thrilled with potentially drawing that in the quarterfinals. Obviously lost both of those games in the regular season, but it's hard to complain too much for, with Jared Calhoun's second season in town. They've been very, very good. They like to run. They've been pretty good on defense. That has dipped a bit of late, but they can score a bunch of points, and it's not too different from what they did last season, or even really the couple seasons before that. It's Utah State basketball, sort of as it has been.
Right on. And when you're looking at this bracket, it sounds like you'd rather face Wyoming rather than UNLV coming out of that first round. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Wyoming gave Utah State plenty of trouble as well in Laramie. The game in Logan was a bit of a blowout, but UNLV, beat Utah State twice, beat Utah State in Logan, only team to do that this season. Really blew them out on the road a couple weeks ago. It's not a matchup that Utah State likes. UNLV has a ton of size, a ton of athleticism. Tyron Jones is hard for anybody to deal with, but he's been especially hard for Utah State to deal with. They just don't have they don't really have the bodies to do that. I think that they have not done themselves any favors in their matchups with UNLV. Those have not been two of their better performances, and getting a bit of rest here could be helpful. They didn't have a bye. They played Memphis on what would have been their bye during the conference season, and so they do get to recover a little bit physically, but UNLV's a tough team. UNLV's won a bunch of games recently. They have, I think more talent than their place in this bracket would probably suggest. And Utah State's had a bunch of trouble with them. And I think that, Jared Calhoun would much rather see Sundance Wicks, who he has plenty of experience coaching against, even going back to the Horizon League.
Awesome, man. So one question we've all got for Utah State: if they don't make it out of the quarterfinals, do you think they're still in on the tournament?
Yeah. I think that they're probably locked at this point. 25 wins was the number that they've been targeting throughout the season. Jared Calhoun is all about he talks to the bracketology guys. He likes to pretend that he doesn't, but he does. And 25 wins is the number that they've been sort of talking about really even since the beginning of the season. They got there. They have just a solid resume, strong resume. Losing in the quarterfinals might be a seed line drop, but I think it would be more from an 8 to a 9 than from, in the field to out of the field. They're playing for seeding at this point. They're playing to try and get 3 wins, try and get a second trophy, and maybe play themselves into a 7, maybe even a 6 seed if they get really lucky. I would guess probably not a 6 seed, but I think they're pretty safely in the field at this point, because even if you do lose that quarterfinals game, you're losing to a good team. There's not really another landmine on the schedule for them.
Good deal, man. Well, I'd say best of luck to the Aggies, but I think Wyoming will probably be facing them if we can make it past UNLV. So as long as nobody gets hurt, that's all we want to see.
Yep.
All right, moving on down to the number 2 seed. Fiend, take it away. Let us know about the Techs this season and what you expect to see in the tournament.
Yeah, the Aztecs, I would say this has been kind of an underwhelming season. I think they've underperformed. They were the Mountain West, favorite to win the Mountain West this year. Obviously finished second, which is still not bad. And there's some great teams in this league. But I think this team, with what they brought back in Miles Bird, who was, toying with going to the NBA. We had Magoon Gwath, our 7-footer. He was dipped his toe into the portal. He came back. And then we got Reese Waters, who was out last year, who was, I think, 6th man of the year at USC, and, was a really strong player for us in 2024. We had a really good core nucleus coming back, but for whatever reason, it just did not, we did not gel. We dropped a game to Troy at home early in the season that we shouldn't have. Troy just won the Sun Belt. So, they're a really good team. And we played some really tough games to start the season. We lost to Michigan, lost to Baylor, and lost to Arizona. And so I really thought that was going to prepare us well for the Mountain West season. And we had some injuries. Goon coming back from a knee, was having some issues with that. He had a hip problem. And we started off, I think, in January playing pretty well. But then there was a stretch there in February where we had a lot of injuries. Goon, again, he's just not healthy. His knees bothering him. I don't know how he's going to be for the Mountain West tournament. We had Miles Bird, who had a really hard time dunking with two hands and got made fun of for that. He tweaked a knee at Boise, and so we don't know about the health of him. LZ Harrington, our star freshman, he moved into the starting lineup, and he's been in a walking boot. And so, we have great depth on this team with 11 guys who can play. But there's just been a lot of interchanging parts, and they just have not been able to get in a rhythm and really mesh as a team. And down the stretch there, very tough games, especially on the road. The Aztecs do not play well at altitude. I do believe there is a competitive advantage with teams who play at altitude versus teams that are sea level teams. And so that really, really hurt us those last 4 or 5 games. But we just have not had the consistency. We get beat at home by Grand Canyon, then we go on the road. We look lackadaisical at CSU. We come home. We play probably our best game of the season against Utah State, and then go on the road and drop 2 more. And so just the up and down consistency, you never know what you're going to get with this team. And I don't know really what to expect in this tournament. I'm just hoping for the best. The last time we were in a situation where we had to win the conference tournament was in 2018. That was a team that very much like this team kind of underperformed in the regular season. And hopefully they can put it together for 3 games. We certainly have the talent. Now, will they have the consistency to do that?
Brian, can I ask a question? Do you mind?
Yeah, fire away, man. Go ahead.
One of the things I want to ask, what you see when you see your Aztecs. I'm going to ask, this is kind of a real pointed question. When they warm up, because when they came to Fort Collins, when I watched them in warm-ups, I thought they were a really unfocused team. Yeah. And they gave me vibes of UNLV 10 years ago, those Dave Rice teams that were loaded with NBA level players. And they just seemed to just want to fool around during warm-ups. Yeah. And I'm not joking. I was just surprised how unfocused they were. Do you see that out of this team?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I don't think – I think I would totally agree with you. They go into games and they're doing all kinds of dunks and just kind of playing around. They want to have fun, right? And at some point, you have to lock in and get focused for a game, right? And so, yeah, we've had some really tough starts to start games because I feel like they have not been focused. I'll be honest, that CSU game, they even admitted that they didn't practice well last couple of practices before that game. They just were not locked in, and it really showed in that game. But it's been pretty much all season. And here's the thing with Coach Dutcher, he's not a disciplinarian. He's not going to get these guys and get in their face and tell them to change their habits. He has a player-led team. So if you don't have leaders at the top really setting the example for the young guys, then you're going to have guys who are unfocused, And so I think our leaders are Miles Bird, our Reese Waters, who's very soft-spoken. They really need to set the tone for the team. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe the vibe will be different with their backs against the wall. I think they pretty much figured that they were just going to walk through the season and the Mountain West and be sort of handed an at-large bid. And now we're staring at having to win the tournament. So, yeah, it has been, I would say, definitely the lack of focus. It shows in their play because they'll have moments where they really are locked in and then other moments where they just are not. So.
If I may chime in too, I just wanted to ask, because you did bring up Miles Bird, right? And I think Miles Bird was probably one of the main candidates for preseason player of the year. And he's kind of one of those guys you just mentioned, kind of just not kind of performed to the level that you would expect, right? He went out and tested the NBA waters and then end up returning to school. And as a San Diego State fan, you're probably stoked that he's coming back for another year because you're coming back with additional pieces like Wath, like Reese Waters, like, man, we're just going to completely take over this conference and run it through. But I mean, are you surprised that he's kind of had a mediocre season? I probably say he kind of deserve the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's showing up in that conversation, but offensively, the numbers haven't been there, and he kind of, I wouldn't say fallen in the shadows of like a Mason Falslove or MJ Collins or something like that, but I felt like we all just expected so much more.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that was sort of the evaluation that the pros, gave him was, hey, you need to like hit from 40% from three, and he takes a lot of deep threes. That's another thing with this team is they don't always have the best shot selection. He plays hard though. That's the one thing I love about Miles Bird. He does play hard. He plays hard on defense. He's stealing the ball. And blocking shots. I mean, that's one thing that I will give him, and I think he is deserving of Defensive Player of the Year. But certainly, we'd love to see more production on the offensive end, and just more consistency. He's been very up and down. Went to UNLV, and I think he went 5 for 5 at UNLV. I mean, I don't know any Aztec that's done that from 3-point range that has had been perfect 100%. But then he'll have games where he goes 1 for 8. And he just keeps chucking them up there. So, again, very, very inconsistent, but I do love the energy that Miles brings, and he's a big piece to our defense. And when he's playing well on defense, we have a better shot at winning.
Good deal. And we'll talk more about San Diego State after we let Steve have his say on the Colorado State-Fresno game. But before we get there, Erik, fill us in on New Mexico. How's the year gone? How's the tournament look? What do you think? Erik, I think you're muted, man.
Oh, you're right, man. Sorry about that. I don't think anyone in Albuquerque or in Lobo Nation could have predicted the type of season that the Lobos have had this year. I mean, I think they were one of 3 teams in the country that had a complete roster and coaching turnover. They lost everybody, coaching staff. And so when they had to reconstruct this roster, they hired Erik Moulton, who came over with a lot of pedigree. He was coming off a really good season at UC San Diego, who ended up making the tournament last year on a 30-5 season. They ended up taking a Michigan squad, a really good Michigan squad, down to like the final minutes in the NCAA tournament first round. So I think we had somewhat of an expectation of what kind of coach Erik Moulton was, but in terms of roster construction, it was a big question mark. One of the first key commits that he got was Dayton Albury. He came over from Utah State, and obviously he played well against UNM last year, so Lobo fans were excited that he was going to be joining the Lobos. But other than that, a lot of it was a big question mark, right? There wasn't a lot of notoriety or a lot of advertising around Tomislav Buljan, who came in, right, the 23-year-old freshman, but he's proven to be a big dominance, not only on the rebounding side, but just down low. He's been a load for a lot of these other Mountain West defenses to handle. And then I don't think anyone could have predicted the type of season that freshman Jake Hall would have had either, right? So Jake Hall is probably going to get the Mountain West Freshman of the Year award. And I mean, just based on what he's been able to do, how he's played, the statistics that he's put up, the efficiency, he very well could end up on first team all Mountain West too. I mean, he's coming off a 32-point performance. He went 11 of 22 at Utah State for 7 threes in a big game, right? A Mountain West championship game for the regular season title. So, I mean, it's been a whirlwind. We've seen this Lobo team play really well in spurts throughout the season, really efficient on the defensive side. I think Erik Moulton's kind of scheme is predicated on the defense, really protecting the rim, forcing teams to shoot more from the perimeter. But they've also been bitten by that too. Like over the last 3 games, or over the last 4 games, they've lost 3, and they've just kind of run into a buzzsaw with Colorado State lighting them up here at the Pit. They played San Diego State. They lost to Utah State on the road. So not super excited with the Boise State matchup in the first. If I would assume that they probably would knock off San Diego State, and they're 0-2 against Boise State this year. So just really tough matchup in terms of size. But it's really hard to tell what you're going to get from this team in the Mountain West tournament, because if they do figure out a way to knock down shots from the perimeter, get guys like Jake Hall to get going, get guys like Dayton Albury to kind of penetrate, get in the lane, create for others, guys step up off the bench, relying on other freshmen like Urias and Net, who's kind of over exceeded expectations as well. So it's been an overwhelming season, I would say, for UNM, because we came in with low expectations. We didn't know what to expect when you have a complete roster turnover, but it's been fun, and these guys have competed well, and we're doing it mostly with true freshmen on the court too. So that's exciting. But really looking forward to the Mountain West tourney, and it's sad to see the Mountain West as we've all come to know it over the last 20 odd seasons. The rivalries with San Diego State, with UNLV, with Utah State, even Boise State, Colorado State. You can throw a lot of these teams into the mix, and it's all going to change for both leagues next year with the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. But I'm glad we're going to get to go out there and cover it this season, run out. But I think any team really, from the 1 seed in Utah State and the 8 seed in UNLV, to really have a decent shot of winning it all. So it's wide open, and we're looking forward to it.
Right on. Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. It could have been such a good basketball league, but none of us are in charge of any of that. So we'll just keep on following our teams and having a good time. We'll let Nick have his piece on Boise State, but first we got to get to Brennan in the number 4 slot. And since we don't have anybody,
hey Brian, before we move on, I just want to ask one question for all of us, and it's based on Erik and we had Patrick earlier. If you had to pick a coach of the year in the Mountain West, would you take Jared Calhoun or Erik Olin? I'd open it up to everybody here.
Maybe
I'd
my
take
answer
Olin. I don't think it's close.
Yeah. My bias in me is going to have to stay with Olin, just based on what he had returning. I think Jared Calhoun had a lot more returning, and he's got a senior loaded roster. And with Calhoun, he had to construct this roster and get these guys to somewhat play cohesive as a unit, and he did it in just about 3 or 4 months. So my vote is with Coach Erik Olin.
Yeah. Now, to give Calhoun some credit, he did have to retain that roster, so it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for him. But yeah, I think Olin's done a hell of a job at New Mexico this year.
Yeah, Erik Olin certainly got my vote. Is between those two for sure. But like you guys said, for the returning production that Olin had, and he's getting like Jake Hall. I mean, he's leading this team in scoring, and with the Bullion emergence, like for sure, from an outsider looking in, this guy just kind of came out of nowhere, and they've just done a really good job. But the defense has been impressive, but the scoring output. I mean, people thought New Mexico was going to be 5th place, and here they are, top 3.
So, being from San Diego and having seen and played against UCSD, I mean, we knew exactly what Olin was as a coach. He is a guy who took at UCSD players at the D2 level and brought them up to a D1 level, to the point where they almost upset Michigan in the tournament. So there was no doubt in my mind that he was going to have success at New Mexico. I didn't think he was going to flip that roster and have this much success that early. You look at a guy like Jake Hall, he wasn't even really highly recruited. We didn't even recruit him. I don't think he was on our radar. A guy like Jake Hopp from Point Loma Nazarene, I've watched that guy play in the Swish League in San Diego. He's a Division II player. That Erik Olin is just a fantastic coach, and he's a guy who is always going to do more with less. And that's what you really need in this NIL era, because the resources are limited and you need to maximize the talent that you have on the court.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was UC San Diego that took San Diego State down to the wire
twice.
Was it last year? And it was San Diego State. It was Jaden Ledee hit a last-second buzzer beater layup to secure that win. But yeah, I think Erik Olin is just kind of do more with less. And
he took a team into Utah State and won last year too.
Hey, that's right, Steve. That's right. He did. And Jake Hall, under recruited. I think Urias Tenet also under-recruited and both undersized, right? Jake Hall, I think, kind of got knocked because he wasn't athletic. He wasn't very big. But he's been the kind of heart and soul of this team. And for a true freshman in today's day and age of college basketball and NIL and paying players, and they've just so far exceeded expectations. It's been a fun ride, that's for sure.
Best shot fake in the Mountain West.
Shot fake, Jake.
Yeah.
Brennan, who you got on Coach of the Year
Yeah.
before you get to Grand Canyon?
Yeah, I got Olin. I was so impressed by him. That game in Phoenix was a crazy one. GCU, they went down by like 20 early, and then New Mexico, they climb all the way back. There was like 3 games within it. And it essentially, after all the momentum switches, came down to this like 4-minute, 5-minute game where it ended up being tied. They're on the road, and GCU is back in this thing. It's okay. Let's see who's going to go. And the conviction, like the team they take on his whole personality. That's so calm, not in a rush. They know what they want to do. And I know, I wrote my article. Sometimes it seems like Lobos fans, you're coming off Richard Pitino, who's, he's a character in himself, right? But it's kind of the exact opposite. So I know it maybe didn't excite people, kind of the way he carries himself, but you notice that's how his team plays. They're so prepared. They know where they want to go. They know what they want to do. You see those Jake Hall shots against GCU and Fresno to clinch both those games. It's the same exact shot. They get the ball in his hands right where he wants it in the correct part of the court. And, it's little stuff like that adds up throughout a season. So Calhoun's incredible. Nothing to take away from him, but I just went with Olin again, same as you guys have said, just what he did with what he had for the turnaround. I think we're seeing that in college basketball. It's one of the toughest things right now is coming in year one and trying to win. It's regardless of how early you get hired, it's still going to be really tough. You got to get all that stuff in place. So for him to do that, it was a runaway for me, Olin, for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, let me comment. Let me give you my thoughts too, because I don't want to downplay what Jared Calhoun did. Brian, you mentioned about him retaining players, but he went out in the portal and he identified players that would fit really, really well in his system. I point to MJ Collins, even Zach Keller, Colby King, all the guys he got in the portal. He saw something in them that he knew that would fit into what he was wanting to do. And that is such a critical part about going into the portal, is identifying those that are going to fit. And so I give him a lot of credit for that, but I'm with all you guys on Olin. I tell the story, and I don't know if all of you are aware of this. I ran into Erik Olin at Denver International Airport when I was coming back from the CSU Grand Canyon game. And Olin and New Mexico were coming to Fort Collins to play, and we just happened to be getting on the train together to get the baggage claim. And I spent a good 10 minutes talking with him, and he was wonderful to talk to. He was really, really open, talked in great detail. And the one thing I loved about him, and it relates to what Brennan was saying, he's highly intelligent, but very calm when he explains things. And I was very, very impressed with him. And I think he just did an unbelievable job in Albuquerque this year.
Yeah. And that's how you get New Mexico to a 3 seed in, what is a very deep basketball league, and part of that depth is bringing in newcomers in Grand Canyon who came in and competed right away. Brennan, why don't you give us a recap of the season and kind of tell us what you expect to see out of the Lopes during the tournament this year?
Yeah, well, I think coming into the season, one, there was a lot of anticipation because, they had a ton of success in the WAC without a doubt. But they weren't ignorant to the fact on what the Mountain West was. They knew what they were up against. And so at the point where they were, building their roster, they didn't know if they were going to be in the Mountain West yet. So they said, okay, we just got to build this if we're going to be in the Mountain West, because we're not going in the Mountain West without the proper size, athleticism that's needed to compete night in, night out. So they went and they tried to get out ahead of it. And if they got in, they were going to be ready to rock. And then it happened. So there was so much unknown. They brought in a ton of talent, and that was my thing. Preseason, they brought in this talent, but we just talked about camaraderie and how important that is. And it was going to be a lot different. Like, they had 2 guys off the bench that were returning. Listen, they're good pieces, Caleb Shaw, Mekhi Williams. But at the end of the day, most of their production that they were going to have this year was going to be, guys coming in from other places that hadn't played together, and then you add on top of that F.A. Demerald, a big coming over from Turkey and not getting to campus until like mid to late August. And so, I wasn't trying to like hamper expectations, but I told people like, you can't cheat that process of building a team and camaraderie. Like, I know it sounds dumb in this era, but you can bring in as much talent as you want. You can look over to, USC right now. You can bring in all the talent you want. You've got to kind of build it, and it's got to work, and it's got to make sense. And so I think there were some definite bumps in the road. Started out with a brutal loss to Youngstown State, over, I believe, in the Horizon League. And that one came out of nowhere. They were 16.5-point favorites. And honestly, Youngstown State not only beat them, but they kind of controlled the whole game. And so that was a wake-up call. And then they went to St. Louis and got the brakes beat off them. I mean, they were down 28, I think, with 5 minutes left. And this was looking not good. I mean, they were getting pushed around. It just was ugly. And, there was a little bit of pessimism early on in the season. And again, I had to go back and say, hey, hamper those expectations. There's a process with this group. And they started playing much better. Now, there were still some hiccups, even in Mountain West play. You guys are going to be familiar. They had the Wyoming right after they come off that great San Diego State win on the road. They galvanize, they get excited, they go into San Diego State and get it done, a place that just doesn't happen, quite frankly. And then they come back home and they lose to Wyoming and get kind of Wyoming controls the game. So it's been that up and down, but at the end of the day, they have a ton of talent. The ceiling is really high with this group, without a doubt. GCU, I love what they bring to the table. They ended up finishing as the best defensive team in the Mountain West after, again, some pretty poor defensive efforts early on in the season. They're physical. They guard tough. People are asking me like, what, how have they played? What are they like? It sounds cliche, but they just guard really tough. They're really physical on the perimeter. Puts a lot of pressure on the refs. I know it's frustrated some teams this year in the Mountain West, without a doubt, but they put refs in really tough positions. They play really physical on the perimeter. They don't want you to get into the paint. So the bottom line is, do they have enough offensive firepower? Now we're seeing some guys make some threes. Dusty Stromer, Caleb Shaw's back from injury. That's worth calling out. Really big deal there. They really missed him, for a few weeks there. So listen, if you had to ask me, it was kind of this roller coaster crazy way of maybe getting to the spot that I thought they would be around that 4 or 5 seed. Again, a crazy route to get there. Some wins that they probably shouldn't have had, some losses they absolutely should not have had. But they're coming in, they're going to be focused. The staff's done a really good job getting ready for conference tournaments, a different beast. Again, I don't say that without acknowledging how different the Mountain West is, but they're coming in, as healthy as they've been in a while. They lose Wilhelm Breidenbach, the big, but yeah. So I think there's a lot of excitement, a lot of optimism, and the bottom line is they just got to play good enough ball on the offensive side, because it can get a little ISO and it can get a little ugly quick. That's what we saw against Wyoming. And, if they can avoid some of that, things can really get going, because we know they're going to bring the defense every night. I think, I was talking with some Utah State fans. They were replying to all sorts of stuff. We love them out there. And a few of them were actually saying like that, like we were bummed to see GCU on our side of the bracket. Now, whether or not offensively they've got it, but the bottom line is they play physical. They're really big, like really, really big. And so I think that's an interesting matchup for some teams. But yeah, so we'll see how it plays out. But, all in all, I think it's, maybe the season I expected with higher highs and lower lows than I expected. I thought it'd be a little more neutral, but yeah, I thought they did a great job. They brought in the talent. Now we'll see what they can get done this week in Vegas.
Right on. And when it comes time to figure out who you're playing next, like we don't have anybody from Nevada or Air Force here, so we'll just all talk about it. But it's more than likely that Nevada is going to be playing Grand Canyon. I mean, Air Force has a chance to be the worst team in the country this year at 3-29, which is a shame.
Yeah, I don't, and again, not disparaging, not anything disrespectful, but just calling it like it is. They're really bad, like really, really bad. They don't have size. Even a lot of their threes, they take 3 or 4 feet behind the 3-point line. They're not very physical, and it's just a tough reality for them moving forward in college basketball, right? Nothing disrespectful to them, the academy, whatever, but they can't really do NIL. And if you want to win in college sports right now, and I know they've had a little bit of success in football, some Olympic sports they've done better. Like I don't know. In this modern era, I don't know how much it matches up. with their school, kind of those academies, what they're doing. But I would expect Nevada. Nevada will probably be 16, 17 and a half point favorites, at least, probably more, I would bet. And I would expect them to pretty easily handle business there. See the ball go in the hoop and then be ready to play GCU on Thursday.
Well,
If I could, let me just add something about Air Force, because, I want to point to something that happened yesterday. The Air Force women beat a really, really good San Diego State women's team.
Yeah.
Somehow they figured out, and, believe me, there's not a lot of NIL, but there is NIL in the women's game too. And there's not a very big female population at the Air Force Academy. And somehow they found a way to beat a team that's a top 70 team in the net. A really, really good San Diego State team. And I would point to one thing, just to be down the road. This year's an absolute disaster, and I don't think they have a chance of winning a game. But if they bring a coach in who has a clue, Joe Scott has totally destroyed that program. And I'll go say that. I don't have any problem saying that. Totally destroyed the program, ruined the confidence of every player in that program. They brought in some good players, and they all left within their first 2 years. Jake Highbreeder at Fresno State. You got a kid named Ritus Petratus who plays for Cal. All these guys were all conference level players as sophomores, and they left because they couldn't stand playing for Joe Scott. They didn't want to be in the military. If they bring in a good coach, things can turn around there. It will be difficult for them, but you need to have more of a coach with a mentality like an Erik Moulton, where you're not going out and you have to be able to identify the right players. You have to have a system, and you have to be able to fit them in, and it can be done. Maybe not to the level of ever being a top 100 team again, but certainly a little more competitive than being 0-20 with no chance of winning a game.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they're going up against a really good Nevada team. I mean, Elijah Price goes over there from Fresno State, one of the best players in the league. They've got all kinds of talent on that Nevada team. If anybody wants to speak to Nevada, go for it. But, Nevada's who Grand Canyon is going to see almost, without a doubt.
Well, one thing I'll add for my final comment on this is I mentioned the crazy games and the games they shouldn't have lost. GCU, when they went up to Nevada, if any of you recall this game, GCU was up, I believe, 6 with like 50 seconds left, and 100 certain events lined up in a perfect timeline where Nevada ended up with the ball after 2 missed free throws, and they threw up like a 26, 27 footer, and GCU fouled them. They made the free throws, and the game went into overtime. You knew the game was over at that point. Like, GCU wasn't going to win that game after that. So GCU definitely, I'm not going to say whether or not, they're thinking about that, but it's got to motivate them a little bit. Like, hey, we got to get some get back here. We'll see. Because like you guys said, Nevada's pretty good. I had Elijah Price on my first team, all Mountain West. Like, he was that good, I thought, and dynamic, especially when you consider the defensive end. So a ton of guards who can fill it up. They're, not playing the best basketball over the last few weeks, but they've got a ton of talent, just like, all these teams we've talked about.
Hey, I would share something. I don't know if I've shared this with any of you guys, but Brennan, you brought back a funny story. You remember the ref who made the call in that game against Nevada? You remember who it was?
I do not, but
it was Amy Bonner, everybody's favorite.
Oh, yes.
Bonner.
Yes.
The next game, I think the next game she worked was CSU was at San Diego State. And they made a call, I think it was early in the second half, where somebody from CSU fouled a 3-point shooter for San Diego State. And it was a pretty obvious foul, but it wasn't going to stop Ali Farokhmanesh. And Amy Bonner made that call, and he wasn't gonna hold back. And he looked at her and he said, "Just another BS call, Amy. Another BS call on a 3-point shot." And he was hammering on her, and she didn't tee him up. Now, a few games later, San Jose State was up in, I believe it was Boise State, and within like the first 4 minutes of a game, Tim Miles got a technical foul, and Amy Bonner again was the ref. Tim didn't like the way Amy was calling the game, and Tim said to her, "Make the right effing call, Amy." And he said it 3 times before he got the tee. But I just thought I'd share that just so that we be aware of the fact that we're going to get Amy Bonner in the Mountain West Conference tournament every night. Just be ready for her stuff.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So yeah, that GCU Grand Canyon, or that GCU Grand Canyon, that Grand Canyon Nevada matchup is going to be interesting for sure. It's probably going to be one of the better games of the tournament.
If I may, I'm just going to put my 2 cents in there on Nevada since we don't have anyone talking about them. But I mean, it's really hard to go against a coach like Steve Alford too, right? Because I mean, obviously he was here for 6 seasons. He was 155-52, won 6 Mountain West championships at UNM. There is no better coach in the Mountain West right now, defensively minded. Maybe not as much as Dutch is, but I think Steve Alford might be a close second in terms of getting his teams to play and what wins championships, and not only your league, but even further on is defense and rebounding. Nevada is kind of a secret dark horse, in my opinion, just not only based on like Elijah Price, but just what else do they bring to the table, right? Corey Camper, Vaughn Weems, Tayshawn Comer, all 3 of those players are very capable of scoring 20 points a night. And in the last matchup against UNM, 3 out of the 4 did score 20 points in that game, and they out-rebounded UNM by at least 10 rebounds. So if they have the right game plan, which Steve Alford and Noodles Neal are really good at kind of playing that good cop, bad cop scenario, to me, they're kind of the dark horse in this tournament. I know a lot of like people are choosing UNLV to kind of maybe upset the bracket a little bit and kind of might make a run towards that championship game, but Nevada might be another team to pay close attention to as well.
Yeah, for sure. So that gets us through that one. Before we move on and talk about Boise State and San Jose State, we do have the Scarlet Standard joining us here. Go ahead and let us know who you are and a little bit about you, man.
What's up, everyone? My name's Mike. I run the Scarlet Standard. I cover UNLV athletics. It's kind of a little bit about me. All my socials are SS_media LV. I'm happy to join you guys.
Right on. We're happy to have you, man. And you and I will kick it off here with Wyoming and UNLV here in a minute. But first, we're going to pass it over to Nick. Let's talk about Boise State and San Jose State. Unfortunately, I didn't see either of the games this season. So, Nick, kind of let us know how San Jose looked this year as compared to previous years, how they did against Boise, and what you expect.
Well, I'll tell you this much. When we were kind of looking things down the stretch here in the regular season, this was not the draw that San Jose State probably wanted. They were probably looking for one of those 2 Nevada teams or Colorado State, just because with what Boise State brings to the table with the forwards, with Javen Buchanan and Drew Fielder and, Andrew Meadow, really good at getting to the paint and, just finishing inside. That has been, kind of the wink link for, San Jose State this year. They've been dealing with a bunch of injuries, of course. That's really been the story in San Jose. But, San Jose State over the years has played Boise State very well under Tim Miles. In particular in San Jose, the series in Boise hasn't been all too close. They've never won there in their program history. But Miles always will drag it into the mud, will always keep it close. The game in San Jose, they trailed by 3 at halftime, and then the floodgates just opened to lose by 31. And then, Steve mentioned how, Miles got into Amy Bonner in the matchup in Boise, lit her up, and he ended up getting teed up, and, they gave up a 17-0 run in the first half. And then, they ultimately kind of put things together, had themselves an early second half lead. And then, Boise just kind of made some shots. The 3 started hitting. San Jose State is always going to kind of get into their little field goal drought for about 3-4 minutes. And then that's when the opposition really takes it to them. So, the matchup for this year's San Jose State roster to what Boise has, I would say is, it's going to be a little bit challenging. You're probably going to need, some outlier shooting numbers and, things within that nature for San Jose State to shock the world in a matchup like this. But I'll tell you this much, it's March, guys. And you see what goes on in other tournaments. Like you see Georgia Southern in the Sun Belt, get to the championship game today in 6 games in 6 days. So, you just really never know. And Tim Miles in this tournament since he's been here at San Jose State has always kind of given teams his best shot in the first round. He had the historic team 3 years ago. Just it's going to kind of always be within arm's length when he's kind of in the underdog role. And, I'm just intrigued to see what happens out there.
Yeah, San Jose's got some good pieces there too. You got Gaga there. Colby Garland's probably one of the better players in the team. I imagine he'll be a first team All Mountain West, if not second team. So they definitely have a shot.
Yeah, no, and that's the whole thing. That's what's kind of been unfortunate about the San Jose State side is because Javon Hanna, who've only played 2 games this year, was really supposed to be a big part of of just the roster. He had 3 years at Western Michigan, and he was really an all defensive guy. And San Jose's defenses have been not great under Tim Miles, and he's only played 2 games, and he's not going to be available for the tournament. And they lose their starting big man in Yafet Mundi, who was like a double-double machine when he was out there. And they're now dealing with Nganga, former Boise State Bronco, I should mention, was recruited by them, played for 1 year there, didn't play too much. But that's, I think, an intriguing storyline heading into this one. And, outside of that, they've been playing Adrian Myers, an undersized 4-man, who's really having to go bang and bump with all of these, upperclassmen, big guys, and they got 2 freshmen behind them with Yafet Mopadelli and Douglas Langford, who are still really just trying to get their feet wet. So the book is on San Jose State. You're going to beat them in the paint, and they really just need to have one of these crazy shooting performances like they did in an upset win versus Nevada.
Yeah, and any given night, right? It's just kind of how it works in the tournament here. And you're totally right. Tim Miles has got a good track record in this tournament, and you can never count anybody out.
I mean, you mentioned Georgia Southern. Just look at the women's tournament for this 9-seed Air Force is going to the championship. More than likely, probably against the UNLV women. I mean, Lindy has them rolling right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I will say this about the San Jose side. Man, Kobe Garland, if anyone hasn't really watched him, man, he is just really like an old school point guard. Like, he's not going to take a lot of threes. He's got this, bad postures to his game. He's, left-handed. He's a tough twos type of guy. Like, when everybody goes and sees him on Wednesday night, you're going to be like, man, like, this guy just hit some tough mid-range jumpers. He's really good with the floater. And, I think, just for SJSU, you're going to see where he's going to play make for everybody else first. And then when the game, when he kind of has to take over, he can go and he can go on a 10-0 run. I think he is for sure, like, you're seeing it with the stats, but man, he is one of the best bucket getters this league has to offer.
Nick, I might be oversharing here a little bit, so I apologize, but I was talking with a GCU coach right after that game in San Jose. And I was asking him, like, yeah, how was the game up there? Because there's a ton of crazy runs in that game, right? And they were, they're like, we went back and watched the film, and they're like, Brandon, you're not gonna believe this. Like, we went through and we graded every Garland possession because we're like, what the heck happened? Like, we don't like when guards get going on us like that. It's like we went through and we graded, and honestly, there was like a lot of A+. And then it was just, you look up and the ball goes in the basket. It's like, that wasn't like, we did everything we talk about in practice, what we want guys to do and what the scout was. And then the shot just went in. And then the next possession, the same exact thing. So he's really good. I do wish he had more around him. Obviously, guys were healthier because, if he can get the load off him just a little bit, he could probably be a little more efficient. But he's really impressive.
Yeah, let me add to that. Because I had Tim on one of my shows a couple of weeks ago, and he used the word crafty. I think that's the perfect definition for Colby Garland. Old school, crafty, knows how to just figure out a way to get shots, and then he makes them. The thing that and I shared something with Tim. I've watched enough of him, and believe me, he's a handful to coach against. Anytime he's coaching in a tournament game, San Jose State is going to be in the game. But the biggest issue, and Nick, this, is the lack of players, the lack of depth, the injuries of it's not just the lack of bigs, it's just bodies themselves. And then you watch San Jose State play, and they can be pretty competitive for 32 minutes. And it's that final 8 minutes that they struggle to get over the hump. And I told Tim, I said, your job is to convince these players, you got to go between the ears with these guys and convince them they're not tired those last 8 minutes. And of course, that's easier said than done, because these teams they're playing against are really, really good physical teams. But that's what I see in San Jose State. They always have a shot with Miles coaching.
Yeah, and just a footnote, I guess, heading into this tournament, guys, they've hardly practiced since the Saturday game versus Wyoming, just because they're so ran down to the ground. I mean, Garland's played like full 40s, like 7 of the last 8 games. He finally got a rest on Saturday and played like 33 minutes, which is considered a rest at this point. So, I mean, they've hardly practiced. They're going to go through like the shoot around stuff tomorrow. But I'm interested to just see, what they bring out there, and, how frisky and how long they can, be in this game versus Boise, because it hasn't really been a good matchup for them this year.
Well, and Boise is playing at an unbelievable level. I mean, I would say they're probably playing the best of anyone in the Mountain West right now. So you're really catching them sort of at the wrong time. And Boise has so much length at the guard and the wing position. I mean, my gosh, every guy on that team except for the point guard is like 6'7" at least. They rebound the basketball. They're a really good offensive rebounding team. We saw it last year when we played them first round. They just chucked up a bunch of threes. We couldn't defensive rebound, and they grabbed, second, third, fourth chance possessions, and that's how they beat us, knocked us out in the first round. So, yeah, I love Garland's game, but, man, I'm not sure you guys have the horses to deal with all the length and the athleticism and the talent, and who is going to stop Fielder. I mean, Fielder is just playing at another level right now, a guy who can step out, pop out for the three. He can post up. He's all kinds of matchup problems for San Jose State.
Now, guys, imagine if Boise had Alvaro Cardenas this year. I think they would be like an absolute weapon, because I've been a little skeptical on Dylan Andrews and what he can do for this team. He just, I feel like, doesn't create enough, or in these big games. Brennan saw it when they went to Grand Canyon, where their offense just gets stagnant, and you look at the box scores and you're like, man, the forwards only took this many shots. So that's the only downside, I feel like. Like, if Boise, if they do kind of go to the semifinal game, I do think their guard play could kind of get a little bit tight. But everything around it is pretty good otherwise.
Their guard play reminds me a lot of what UNLV's is. UNLV relies on one player very heavily, obviously, but when they start, I think Boise's problem is their guards aren't mentally strong. When they struggle on one end of the floor, it very well carries over to the other end of the floor, and teams are able to go on big runs. I mean, there's been multiple games where they've been up, 10, 15, and they just have blown it strictly off of guard play by itself. And like you said, they aren't able to make enough to get Felder, the ball the way that he needs to. Starting to do a little bit better at that now, especially with the way Felder's playing, but it's been kind of that's been their glaring problem all season, I think.
From my perspective, I just saw them on Saturday, and they were the best team I saw in the Mountain West coming to Moby this year. CSU's been on a roll, and they absolutely made CSU look poor. Fielder was unbelievable. Dylan Andrews had a good game, but they've become, and I think that they run a lot of 2-man stuff with just Dylan Andrews running run screen pick and roll stuff with Fiedler, and CSU struggled with Fielder, but Dylan Andrews was good. They don't have a good backup for him, and if you can get him and put him under pressure, they have problems, because they don't have anybody else who can put the ball on the floor other than the backup Neto, and he's not very good. And I think that's where they run into problems. Once once he gets tired, or once he gets worked pretty good by a good backcourt, and there's enough of them in this league, I think that's where they're going to struggle. But yeah, they are playing the best of anybody in the Mountain West right now. But we'll see if that carries through to the tournament. They go hot and cold when they go to Las Vegas. They've been hot going there and then get knocked down in the first round. So you just don't know what's going to happen.
Steve, let
And
me ask you.
speaking of teams that can get hot in the tournament, Steve, tell us about Colorado State.
Well, we're hoping they get hot in the tournament. Obviously, it's. I'll just start with saying it's going to be a tall task, I think, for any team to win 4 games in a row. It's been done once by New Mexico 2 years ago, but anybody in the 5 seed and above is in a tough spot. I will say that right up front. CSU, an interesting season, a lot of new players. They only brought back 2 players who had any experience in the Mountain West. Kyle Jorgensen and Rashawn Mbemba. They were counted on not just for their ability, the 2 best big men on the team, but their leadership and their experience within the Mountain West Conference. Mbemba got hurt right away. Jorgensen got hurt 4 minutes into the Utah State game, which was at Logan, the first game of the year. And so all of a sudden CSU was without their 2 bigs, and it was a struggle. They had played well in the non-conference, brought in 6 guys out of the portal, all of whom have done reasonably well. But it was a struggle early on in the Mountain West, and they were 3-8, but a favorable schedule, some lineup changes where once Jorgensen and Mbemba came back, the coaches played them together, and CSU turned into a very dog-slow team. They were the slowest team in the country in terms of tempo. The offense, even as skilled as the players were, just bogged down. And so coaches finally split up Mbemba and Jorgensen. They share the 5 position, and all of a sudden the team started winning, and they won. They whipped off 8 in a row. We've seen progress made by several players, several key players, all of whom are out of the portal. Jace Butler, sophomore who transferred from Washington, Kerry Booth Jr., who transferred from Illinois, have both been very, very good over the last few games. Brandon Recksteiner, a guard who transferred from Virginia Tech, has been shooting very, very well as one of the top 3-point shooters in the league. They've been without another good shooter, Josh Pasquarelli, who sprained his ankle in the Wyoming game. Fingers crossed he hasn't come back since the Wyoming game, but fingers crossed he'll make it back for the tournament. But the one thing, and we've talked, a lot of us have talked till we're blue in the face. CSU doesn't have a Nick Clifford level player. It helps to have somebody like that when you're trying to win a close game. CSU does get things by committee. Their strength is in their balance and depth. I looked up some things. They're the only team that has had 8 different guys lead the team in scoring in the Mountain West. They're the only team that's had 7 different guys score 20 points or more. So they have somebody different can do it every night. The issue is when you get into a close game and at a tournament level game, when it's win or go home, will they have somebody who can step up? But I think they'll be decent. I am worried about the Fresno State matchup, to be honest with you. They got beat by Fresno by 10 the first time around, and were down a dozen points in Moby Arena 2 weeks ago to Fresno before they came back and won by 4. And it didn't look like they would have come back if it wasn't for the fact that Zayn Collins, the point guard for Fresno, got hurt and sat out the last 15 minutes of the game. That wiped Fresno out. Fresno hasn't been the same. Collins hasn't come back. So I don't know if he's going to be back or not. I don't see any kind of reports that say he's going to be playing or not playing, but I think it'll be a tricky game.
Did David Douglas play in that game the first time, or when they were down?
He played in the first game in Fresno. He did not play in Fort Collins. He injured his leg, I believe, 2 games before they came to Fort Collins.
Yeah, not having Collins is a big killer for Fresno. I mean, they're depleted just like San Jose is. I feel bad for their team. They seemed like Vance Waldenberg started to get it going a little bit. They started getting a rhythm, and all of a sudden their players started dropping like flies.
Yeah. The one thing that's interesting about them is, the big kid, Wilson Jakes, has really gotten better the last 5 or 10 games, and he's added a lot to them. The freshman, Deshaun Gorey, has been ridiculously good. And Hydebreeder, we know about Hydebreeder from Air Force. He's a shooter. And they have guys that can shoot. And without Collins, though, it's hard to see that their backup point guard is a Euro that is he plays more like a soccer player, does all kinds of flopping, does all kinds of, he's the prototypical Euro. He's nowhere near as quality as Zayn Collins is. So we'll see. But I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be they'll offer a big challenge to CSU.
I think that's going to be a tight one. There's going to be a lot of. I think a lot of these games are going to be maybe minus UNR versus Air Force. A lot of these games in the opening round are going to be very tight and very competitive.
Yeah.
So one game we're looking at one game I'm really excited to see just because of how lopsided it was during the regular season. They only played once. Is our last game we're talking about, first game of the tournament. UNLV against Wyoming. Mike, UNLV's the higher seed. I'll let you take it away, and then I'll add my thoughts on the Pokes.
UNLV's kind of had a really up and down season. They've had stretches. They started 3-0 in conference play. Went into Laramie, got their door. Probably some people called it the worst loss, one of the worst losses UNLV has ever taken as a basketball program. They got blown off the floor by the Cowboys. They also went into that game. They were kind of in a similar situation like Nick mentioned San Jose was. They had half their team out, with the flu. They didn't even have enough guys to scrimmage play 5-on-5. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the matchup looks like the second time. I know that a lot of they are playing better basketball. They've gone through their highs and lows. They won 3 in a row, lost 4 in a row, won 3 in a row, lost 4 in a row. I mean, this team is carried by Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn. He averages 23 points a game in conference play. Everything runs through him. Similar to San Jose with Kobe Garland. The way he goes is the way the team goes. The team started to take him away. San Diego State didn't do it. The last game of the season, he had 32 against San Diego State. But Utah State did it where they held him scoreless for I think it was the first 20. I think it was the first 30 minutes. He didn't get his first basket till under 10 minutes to go in the second half of that game. They had key guys step up. I think the thing with UNLV is they need to get contributions from other guys that are not Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn. Kamani Hamilton is the X. I always him and Tyron Jones are probably the two X factors for this team, but mainly I would say Kamani Hamilton. If Kamani Hamilton can stay on the floor, he leads the nation in fouling out. He's fouled out 12 times this season. So when he is able to stay on the floor, he makes a major impact. But in games he's played less than 25 minutes, he averages single digits. So he had 24. May have been the one bright spot the first time they played. He had 24 against Wyoming the first time. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see too. Pastner has this he has this history of taking a lower seeded team and making a run in the tournament. So can Dre? I put out a tweet yesterday that said if Dre, which is probably going to happen if Dre gets snubbed for Player of the Year. Is he going to go on a legendary run and carry UNLV through? We'll see. But I think it all hinges on what goes on around him. He's going to get his 20 to 25, and he's done it very efficiently. It's going to be how does Tyron Jones play this time around? How does Kamani play this time around? Can they get contributions from Fleming? Fleming's been more of their glue guy all around. He's had 2 triple-doubles in the last 5 games. So it's going to be very interesting to see the way that they've been running their offense through him as well, trying to get Dre more off the ball. Because people forget he was not Miles Shea was brought in to run this team. Dre was supposed to be the 2 guard. And Miles Shea has not played a single minute for UNLV. So the way that he's developed and turned into that kind of point guard role, we'll see if I think if they can get through Wyoming, Utah State's a good matchup for UNLV. They've beaten Utah State twice this year. They can get a potential rematch with Reno or Grand Canyon. They have the route to get to the championship as a lower seed, but then again, it comes in the history of UNLV's not gotten past that first, that quarterfinal round since 2014. They played Air Force in 12 of those, 10 of those 12 matchups, and they've been able to beat Air Force, but they haven't been able to beat anybody else.
Can I add something to UNLV just real quickly? I looked up a bunch of different NCAA stats, and I don't know if anybody's aware of this. There's only one Mountain West player that is in first in any NCAA stat that they keep track of, and it's Howie Fleming with triple doubles. Only 2 people have had 2 triple doubles in the entire season. That's been critical to their development, as you pointed out, with getting Gibbs Lawhorn off the ball, where he doesn't have to initiate for others. He doesn't have to create for others. He's a scorer. He's really a 2 guard. CSU has done the same thing with Brandon Rechsteiner, not to the degree of Gibbs Lawhorn, but they get Rechsteiner off the ball and he's scoring 15 or 20 a game. Gibbs Lawhorn's good for 30 a game now, but a lot of it is driven by the fact that Howie Fleming is doing a lot of the work, like you said. The other thing I wanted to mention, is there anybody on this in this group right here that doesn't think Tyron Jones is more fun to watch than anybody right now?
He's electric, and you have to believe, like, where, I mean, I know Jake Hall is great from New Mexico, but where would Tyron Jones be in freshman of the year conversations if he didn't miss 4 or 5 games like he did? Where would this UNLV team be without him? Now, he's a difference maker. He's been able to. Obviously, his flaw is free throw shooting. When he's on, he's on. When he's not, he's shooting 2 out of 10 from the free throw line. It's, there's no middle ground. He's had games like Utah State where he went 10 for 12, and it's funny. I think too. I think the missed art that he brings is what he does defensively. He changes shots. He's figured out how to contest shots without fouling, and him being on the floor has been critical. It kind of goes like the Kamani conversation, but it's when they're able to play small ball with Tyron Jones. What they've done too is Pastner's taken Emmanuel Steffen out of the lineup. He's not even played. He's played very little the last 4 or 5 games, and they've just run this small ball lineup with Benarby and Tyron Jones, and getting Fleming back from injury. It's been able, like Steve, like you mentioned, be able to free up Gibbs Lawhorn to get more efficient shots. Keep in mind, Gibbs Lawhorn is getting what he's getting. He's not shooting, he's not shooting the ball 25 times a night. He's shooting the ball 12, 15 times a night, and he's getting it efficient. He's getting it done efficiently, and I think that's what's made this team better. They have been, Pastner called the team out, saying this is the worst defensive team that he's ever coached in his 15 years as a head coach. And they've been a lot better on the defensive end since he's called them out. They look more connected on the defensive side of the ball. Granted, could that be the rotation change and lineup change? It's kind of like Nick has mentioned with Garland. Dre doesn't come out unless he's playing him with 2 fouls. He's playing him with 3 fouls. He's not taking Dre off the floor. I mean, Utah State was a different story when they played them in Vegas. They were able to hold their own. I mean, it's also comes into when Dre is off the floor. If he is off the floor, they're going to need to get contributions from Isaac Williamson off the bench. Isaac has been a spark plug. He's had some really good games. The Memphis game, the Stanford game. He had a great game, especially a great first half when Dre was in foul trouble against Utah State. Can he? His issue has been when teams with veteran guards have really picked on him on the defensive side of the ball. So it's really been up and down for him. But, if they can figure it out, it's, he's going to ride his 8. He's been really only playing 7. He's only going to 8 if he has to. And if he has to go deeper than 8, UNLV might be in trouble. But I think it's going to, I think Sundance Wicks, he put out a very good quote today. Alex Taylor posted it of, he expects it to be a straight up dogfight. Both teams have found their stride and they're both playing really good basketball right now. And I think that's true. It's going to be a grit and toughness, grinded out game. That's good. Probably, which is funny. It's probably going to be in the lower 80s, but it's going to be a grinded out possession game.
Yeah, and there couldn't be a more opposite team to UNLV than Wyoming. UNLV runs everything through Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, who is the best player in the league and should get the league MVP award. We'll see how that shakes out. But Wyoming, on the other hand, has had different leading scorers all year long. Sonny has come out and said that they had to change their style of play 4 different times this year. They lost some players early in the season, Tia Belich and Jared Harris. Then they lost Nas Meyer to the flu. Then Nas came back and they lost Gavin Gores with a broken nose and a broken hand. And then Gavin came back and they finally coalesced into this 4-guard with a big lineup. And it's just been someone different every night. Wyoming's got to be just a giant pain to guard. And their whole philosophy this year is relentless pressure. Sonny calls it RP40, relentless pressure for 40 minutes. When they're on and when they're doing that, you see games where they they just play lights out and they play really, really well. An example is Grand Canyon, or when a depleted UNLV team came to Laramie, those were great games for the Pokes. And then you see other ones like the first game against Utah State where they weren't really connected, or when Colorado State came to Laramie and they thought, well, we just beat Colorado State and they got whooped, man. So the Wyoming team's been kind of up and down. 4-guard lineup again. You'll see Leland Walker is the unquestioned leader of the team. He started out the year as the leading scorer on the team, but has transitioned more into a true point guard role since then, which has really benefited him. And then, Naz Meyer, legitimate freshman of the year contender. I don't think he's going to win it, but he has been one of the better freshmen. And then you've got Demarion Dennis and Caden Bennett, who both can absolutely go off on any given night. The biggest thing that is going to cause problems for the Pokes is, are they going to be able to shoot the rock? When they're making threes above a 30% clip, chances are they're going to win. When they're putting up 2 for 30, that's where the problem is. They're a small team. We've got 3 serviceable bigs that are playing right now. Gavin Gores, Abu Magasa, and Sim Sadi, and 2 of those guys are true freshmen. So it all runs through the guards with Wyoming. I do think UNLV is one of the better matchups for them. Unfortunately, if Wyoming does win the UNLV game, which I think, much like Mike said, it's going to be a dogfight, man. It's going to be the low 80s. Probably going to be some foul trouble in there. Wyoming's been fouling at one of the higher clips in the country this year, but it's going to be tough. I think it's probably one of the better games in the tournament that we're guaranteed to see this year.
I will say the one thing that killed, I know the game was out of hand. UNLV's problem is the slow starts. And that's been how many times have they come back from 10 to 15 down to make it competitive in the second half and they just run out of gas, or they finish the job? One of the two. There's no kind of middle ground. But what killed them the first time they played, which, Pastner put a quote out that said that he had to put them through finishing school, was they missed 20 layups and they missed 20 free throws. And you can't beat an Air Force team missing 20 layups and 20 free throws. I think that, like you said, this time it's going to be who can finish, who can make free throws, and who can take care of the ball. UNLV doesn't turn the ball over much. Even in that blowout game, they only turned the ball over 12 times. But they did, they did, like you mentioned, Wyoming has the habit to foul. In that game, UNLV did shoot 45 free throw attempts. So if they can get to the rim, if they can finish, I think it's going to be anybody's game. I'm interested I don't know what the line is on that game. I don't know if it's been put out yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhere between a pick and 1 to 2. It's going to be a dogfight, and it's going to be who can play, who can finish, and who can basically out execute one another. It's going to come. I think it's going to come down. The big keys is, like you said, free throw shooting, foul trouble, and which guards. Leland Walker's no pushover. If he had the volume that Dre did, he may be putting up the same numbers as Dre. Leland Walker is a very talented player. He torched UNLV the first time. He may be a bad matchup for Dre Gibbs Lawhorn. It's going to be interesting to see what the matchups look like on that aspect. And like we've all talked about, the pace is very different in tournament style of play. It's going to be interesting to see how UNLV adjusts that pace, especially for a team like Wyoming, who likes to kind of grind out those possessions. Can UNLV play defense for 25 plus seconds?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
So I really like this matchup, and we just played UNLV. I saw everything that Dre Gibbs Lawhorn could do on offense. Early in the game, in that SDSU game, I was screaming for us to go ISO on him and really attack him to try to get him into foul trouble. I don't think Dre Gibbs Lawhorn is a great defender, and I'm really interested to see if they will put the ball in Leland Walker's hands and let him try to attack Dre Gibbs Lawhorn and see if you can get him in foul trouble. You get him into foul trouble, like you said, Mike, he goes, so does UNLV. And the best way to neutralize a really great player on the offensive end is to attack him on the other end. And so I'm really interested to see if a team employs that strategy and tries to really just try to get him into foul trouble. And maybe it messes up his offensive game if he's just being attacked relentlessly on the defensive end.
If you want the blueprint defensively of what to do against Trey Gibbs-Lawhorn, look at the film of. I know the game doesn't show it, the results doesn't show it because Utah State couldn't score. But look at what Utah State did to him. They got him in foul trouble early. He sat for 10 minutes in the first half, and when he was on the floor, every time he touched the ball, he was doubled, and they made everybody else beat him. UNLV had 4 guys in double figures that game. That was when Howie had a triple-double. Utah State shot like 30% from the field. UNLV shot over 50. I think they shot like 58% from the field. They just hit everything. So if, like you mentioned, you get the ball out of Dre's hands and you attack him defensively, you got to make somebody step up and beat him. Can Kamani beat you? Can Tyron Jones keep you in the game? Isaac Williamson was like I mentioned, he was the X factor in that Utah State game. He came in when Dre was on the bench, and Dre sat so long because he came in and knocked down 4 threes right off the bat. And that kept, the momentum rolling for UNLV's offense. But if you don't get that, it could be a very, very long night for UNLV.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about what I've seen. First of all, I want to say Wyoming is one of kind of the under the radar playing very, very well teams. If you looked at the advanced analytics over the last 5 or 6 games, they're one of the top 4 teams in the Mountain West right now. They're playing very well. It's been driven by the fact, as Brian pointed out, Leland Walker, he's been turned into more of a point guard. The 2 players that have really developed are Demarion Dennis and Caden Bennett. Bennett shooting from the perimeter. Demarion Dennis is a really, really gifted scorer. Not a great defender, but a very, very small guard who can get to the rim like there's no tomorrow. And so, that's a guy also who, depending on who they can get Gibbs-Lawhorn on, it's not just it could be Demarion Dennis as well who gives him problems. And I'm dying to see these matchups because I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I like the way UNLV is playing. I like what I'm seeing out of them, but Wyoming is sneaky good right now, and I think it's going to be a dynamite game.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's winning by 30 in that game by any means. I think that was a hell of a fluke, and this one's going to be really good. But, now that we've all said our piece on our teams, we can kind of see how the bracket's stacking up here. Assuming Utah State doesn't win the championship, which, they're the 1 seed, they're probably most likely to do it. Who do you all see as the dark horse to take this over?
I personally think Grand Canyon's going to take the whole thing. I just like the way that they've matched up with everybody. I feel like outside of maybe, the New Mexico matchup, just the kind of not on their half of the bracket, they could kind of go with anybody. Their aggressiveness with their guards, Henley obviously knows that building, but he knows the Mountain West and all of the personnel and the coaches. And, Mekhi Williams has been, I would say, pretty underrated for them. The Breidenbach injury worries me a little bit for them just because he's kind of a guy that can spread it out. But their bigs have been so underrated. Like Demerol, he could go on an 8-0 kind of burst himself. Dennis Evans, from a shot blocking perspective, really could kind of, throw a game and, impact it. So, GCU, I don't really personally like the Nevada team all so much. I saw them in San Jose, and they're kind of just one of those teams where, they could fall asleep and just not show up. Alfred hasn't really done good in that tournament either. And, so I like GCU from a coaching standpoint, but also, I like their personnel a little bit better from that area. And I just think GCU could go out there and match up with anybody. And that defense, like Brennan was saying earlier, that defense, I trust it, and defense will travel in a tournament like this. So I think the Lopes are primed to be in the championship.
I think the team that I'm seeing that's going to do really well, and it's because they play well in tournaments of San Diego State. I know that's kind of a cop-out as they're the 2 seed, but even though Dutch isn't a disciplinarian, there is too much talent on that team. And when tournament time comes around, we've seen it in the Mountain West tournament, we've seen it in the NCAA tournament, they're ready to play. Dutcher's a hell of a tournament coach. I think San Diego State's going to be a problem for the bottom half of the bracket.
I feel like the piggyback what Nick was saying, if you were going off of like a player that could carry somebody through a run or a duo that could carry somebody through a run for UNR, it's probably Camper and Price. I may not like the whole makeup of the team, but if Camper or Price can get hot for 4 games, I could see them going through even with the Grand Canyon level. But I mean, I don't see it. I think Grand Canyon's a bad matchup for them. But like I said, like you were saying, if Camper can carry somebody, it could be for a game or two, and they could really disrupt the whole bracket.
Okay, I'll go next. There's a lot of good stories here. The one I'm dying to see, I know, Brian, you just picked San Diego State. I'm dying to see what they're like with their backs to the wall, because when was the last time they didn't make it to the NCAA tournament? It seems like 100 years ago.
2019.
And yeah, they've had such an amazing run, and there's so much culture going on there that I expect them to be a very, very difficult out, but I can't pick them. I'm going with somebody that is, I think, a dark horse. And I think they're playing better than anybody in the conference right now. I'm going with Boise State to win 4 games and come out of the 6th seed.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. San Diego State, the issue, injuries are a big issue. You never know what you're going to get out of Magoon Guath. If he can get healthy and be on the floor and be a dominant presence in the in the low block, at the rim, and then be able to knock down shots from 3, then I think we've got a good chance. Our issue has been rebounding, and strangely enough, it's been closing out on 3-point shots. We have not done a very good job in the last month of doing that, and teams have been shooting very high percentages against us. Just a lot of miscommunications, things that you don't see this late in the season. And so that concerns me. Could they get focused and turn around? Absolutely, they have the talent. But I have to agree with you. The way Boise State is playing, their length, the way they defend on the perimeter, the play that they're getting from Fielder, who's just a star. I think they're getting better guard play from Andrews than they did earlier in the season. And I really like guys like Meadow and Keene and just, glue guys that are on the floor. Javon Buchanan is another one who can, just go off on any given night. They're a real matchup problem with their length and their size, the way they defend, they grab rebounds. I think they underperformed for a good portion of the season, but they're hitting their stride just like Colorado State did last year. And you could see them winning 4 games in 4 games. I know it's tough, but they're going to be a tough out in this tournament.
Right on. Well, we lost a few guys during the process here, but I think that's our show, guys. We got a hell of a tournament coming up, kicking off at noon Pacific time on Wednesday. That's 1 o'clock Mountain time for the half of the conference that's over here. Guys, any parting words before we sign off tonight?
I'm going to go first, and thanks everybody. This has been a joy for me. These kind of shows, I follow all of you guys. I watch all of your material. You do great content. I'm bummed that we're not going to get to be together all together next year in the same conference, but some of us will. But I look forward to seeing all the great work you're going to be doing in the upcoming years, covering your teams. Keep up the great work. It's a lot of fun for me to watch what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off that. I love all your guys' content. Keep doing everything you guys are doing. And if you guys do if you guys are in town this week, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I work right by Thompson Mack. I'm gonna be at Thompson Mack majority of the week, so don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invite and really appreciate it. It's good to meet you guys. We're going to have a lot of fun in Vegas, win or lose. Our crew with Sons of Montezuma, we roll deep in Vegas, so we've got a lot planned there, and looking forward to a great tournament. I've never seen a tournament where you've seen teams like 1 through 9 that are this stacked and even, and so it just makes for a really, who knows, I don't know who's going to win this tournament. It's a coin flip. So going to be a great week. And, if you see us out there, you'll see me in the shades. You'll hear my whistle. Say hi. And I'll do the same if I see you guys. Thanks again for letting us come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Brian, thanks again for the invite. I mean, guys, this tournament, like, regardless of who you're rooting for, whatever dog you have in the fight here, this is like just going to be an elite week here in Vegas. Like, the one thing I feel like we haven't talked about, and just to kind of conclude things on my end, the crowd is going to be off the charts. Like, when you put San Diego State fans, New Mexico fans, and Utah State and GCU student section together, like, if you draw that in a championship, like, man, like, that building might shake. So I'm very, just as a broadcaster and someone that obviously covers San Jose State, like, just from a fan standpoint, this week I think we're due for just an amazing turnout there in that venue in Vegas. So can't wait.
I will say, I think I'm very interested to see what, like you said, what student sections start rooting for what other schools during what other sessions of games, and what these crowds turn into. If let's say a San Jose gets through, what does that look like? Where are they rooting for the underdog? Is people pulling for UNLV or Wyoming versus the Utah State? What does that look like? Especially because like you said, 1 through 9, this league is great.
Yeah. Hey, Bryan, thanks again for doing this. For all of you guys going, safe travels. Have a great time. I'm dying to see if UNLV can beat somebody other than Air Force. They haven't done that in over 10 years. And if that produces, if they beat Wyoming, I want to see if the locals show up to see the Running Rebels play as well, because that could turn into a tremendous home court advantage as well.
I will say it kind of sucks in a sense. I'm not making an excuse for UNLV fans, but putting them in that 12 o'clock time slot, that might hurt them. If they can get through, you probably won't see a lot of UNLV fans until the semifinals. But I want to see if they're able to break through, if this team, fans, as you can see, UNLV social media is very, very vocal. I want to see how many of them actually show up and how many of them actually support this team and this program. Pastner has been calling for it all season. So if you can get through, there's no excuse. You're in the semifinals trying to get to a championship. You should support your team.
Yeah. Hey, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all you guys for jumping on this. We put it together last week. It's really hard to organize to get 8 people on the same schedule. So I think this turned out great. I'm always happy to talk basketball, especially Mountain West basketball, with a bunch of people that know what they're talking about. So this has been awesome. This is going to be one of the more entertaining tournaments. There's really no clear-cut team that is going to win. Utah State got the title, but they have 5 losses. Like, anybody in this tournament is beatable. Anybody in this tournament can win, with probably the exception of Air Force, unfortunately. But it's going to be a great week in Vegas.
What did Chris Murray put out? He put out that it's the first time in league history that the champ had five or more losses or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Right on. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you all joining me, and we will see you all in Vegas.
Ciao, everybody. Have fun.
Thanks, guys.
Viva Las Vegas.